my bed, get out of my incessant head, erase all the lines that stay inside your mind. I'm done with the lies, I'm done with the fleeting embraces, and all of the social graces. Fun isn't everything. I know we're losing lies and falling off, hate my life.
ACUF has just always kind of had a special place in my heart. My granddad settled the land that I was raised on, and my dad was raised on. There's actually quite a bit of music that's happened in ACUF. The Maines family is originally from ACUF. Buddy Holly actually went to school 1 year at Roosevelt in junior high. I believe he was crowned king of, I don't know if it was king of junior high or king of 7th grade, 8th grade, something like that. There actually is a picture of that. I always liked it out here. It's just a real relaxed place. You know, it's still close to Lubbock. And I just always thought a studio out in the country would be a great thing to have. My mom had always been pushing me towards the sound technology program at South Plains College. I never really was that interested to begin with, although I did kind of have a knack for electronics and music. At the time, I really thought I still wanted to be a farmer. And I went one semester at Tech in Ag Economics and decided pretty quick I didn't want to be an educated farmer. So I took my mom's advice, and the only place I really wanted to work was Caldwell Studios. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience getting to, because I was thrust into all kinds of stuff. You know, when I lost my studio in town, I worked for this old stonemason named Manfred Cotter, who was married to Buddy Holly's sister. He taught me to lay stone, and I was just kind of had a knack for it. And, you know, he really poured it into me. And that was kind of my goal during that 3-year period that I was laying stone, is to, you know, learn to build my own studio, and which I did. A piano player named Doug Smith from Petersburg, we became really good friends, and he helped me build the place. And probably spent about 2 years building it. It's never done. There's always something you're wanting to add, and there's always stuff you want. I mean, I've really, for the last probably year and a half, I feel like I've finally gotten everything I need. You know, the whole digital thing has changed things a lot, because you know, used to all your EQs, compressors, those all had to be discrete units. You could only use them on one track, you know, one time. They've since gotten really good at a lot of these plugins that we use now. Now, you do have to still get into the computer system to begin with, and you still have to have really good electronics, you know, from the microphone on a good instrument in a good room, into a good preamp, into a good digital converter, you know, before it ever turns into digital. That is one thing I'm very fortunate of. My time working at the old Caldwell Studios, everything was analog. We had analog 2-inch, we mixed a 1/4-inch analog tape. All our editing was done with razor blades and tape. You kind of had to get stuff right to begin with to ever have a chance at getting a good mix. And that really hasn't changed. Some of the young people coming in these days, they'll take a performance and just, you know, immediately start slicing and dicing, you know, with the mouse, instead of going, you know, I think you can do that better. There's kind of a gift to working a session, and because you're telling somebody they did something wrong or they need to do something better, but you still got to make them feel good while you're telling them that. And I've had sessions that I've done, you know, where something just gets said the wrong way, or somebody else says something the wrong way. You've all of a sudden got this really bad vibe in the room, and you know, it's hard to work and be creative. And when something like that does happen, you know, if I feel things getting a little tense, you know, it's just like, hey, let's take a break, you know. And I mean, we live out in the country out here, so, you know, it's easy to just, you know, walk around out in the yard or out in the driveway, you know, and catch a little bit of peace, and, you know, start back up a little bit later. I've always kind of felt like that's one of my gifts on sessions, is, you know, being able to just keep people moving, keep people feeling good, and still get the best possible recording that I can get.
You dried up.
There are still some holdouts, you know, that are still doing everything on analog, still mixing through analog boards. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's some really great sounding music being done that way. A lot of it like that is actually kind of done as a hybrid. You know, they will start out analog and do a lot of their, you know, rhythm section work on analog tape, and then dump it into, you know, Pro Tools or another digital workstation, and then do their overdubs, a lot of times vocals, and, you know, and the greatest thing about the digital workstations is the automation. You know, being able to, you know, really fine tune. You know, if there's one word that's just, you know, the S is not coming out good enough on a word, well, you can just go in with a mouse, you know, and, you know, draw the S up. There's pros and cons, and, you know, from a business standpoint, yeah, everybody and their dog, you know, can go out to, you know, Guitar Center or a music store and spend a modest amount of money and have a good, you know, recording rig. But, you know, it's kind of like going out and buying a guitar. You can spend $5,000 on a guitar, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can play it. I do have the one thing that you can't buy, and that's just the experience, you know. I think I'm 2 years shy of 30 years now, so I've been doing it for quite a while.
Telling me of places you have seen, bringing messages upon her wings, her wings. So far away from here, like a ghost I'll disappear, appear, appear. I caught the wind blowing through your
I got into music because when I was 8 years old, I was watching TV, and I was a visual artist already. I've drawn since I was a little boy, and an ad for a record store came on TV, and these album covers would spin and hit the, you know, like trying to hype up the new release, you know, bam, this record's available, this record. And this album, Rock and Roll Over by Kiss, hit the screen, and it was the coolest looking thing I'd ever seen in my life. So I made my dad take me to the record store, and I got my lawn mowing money or whatever chore money it was that I had, and I bought that record, and that was it. That moment that I dropped that needle, I knew I was going to be involved in music. I think my parents, who were incredibly supportive of me learning music, really thought that it was just part of being well-rounded. that music is part of a good education. I don't think they knew that it was going to, lead to a lifelong pursuit of that. When all of my friends were playing really fast licks, because they had these great fast twitch muscles in their hands, I really didn't. So I just was trying to learn how to play like really simple licks that sounded really good with it, whatever chord progression I was over the top of. And so I kind of became known, I guess, for pursuing guitar tone, because that was something that was really important to me. It was just the sound of the instrument. I just thought it was so glorious. And then one day, a band that was called Once Dust at the time called me and said, we've heard some of your guitar tones and we'd like you to produce a record for us. At the time they said, well, we'll do a couple songs on spec, and if we like them, then you can record the whole album. So I went and bought a 16-track reel-to-reel analog tape machine on a credit card in hopes that they would like my work. And it turns out, I guess they did, because they had me do the full record and I was able to pay off the tape machine. So that was helpful. It was insane. We tracked it in the bass player's house. I took the bass amp and put it in a closet and mic'd it up, and we put the drums in the living room. And one of the guy's moms sold like clothing and stuff, so she had all these clothing racks loaded with clothes. So we built these barriers between instruments, and so it was completely guerrilla. That's how I grew up, was kind of making music with whatever you had. I'm actually not very formally educated, specifically in music or in recording. In music, I studied with David Brandon, but I actually don't have a degree in music. I did get a degree from Tech, but it's in sculpture, because I'm a visual artist as well. Although I studied music the entire time, I'm a self-learner. If I want to know something, I will research it exhaustively. Now we have the internet, so we could just Google it. But back then I'd have to call an engineer and find out how he mic'd something, or, and I was just crazy enough to do that. Well, I would meet the guys at any studio in town and try to befriend them and get to hang out for a session and watch what they do. I pick stuff up pretty quickly if I see somebody do it. So I would do that, and I was just a voracious reader. Any book that I could get on how to record, how to get good signal to tape, how preamps worked, how compressors worked, even to the point of learning enough about electronics that I could build some of my own gear, which I started doing because I couldn't afford the high-end stuff. So I started, soldering my own cables and building my own preamps and compressors and stuff like that. It just became almost an addiction for me to just learn everything I can about it. So it was reading or talking to another engineer or, anything I could. And now, God, YouTube, it's fantastic. I can just Google it and learn something new today. You know what I mean? I knew I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of gear. I remember I did a record for my wife, who's a pianist, called Hot Chocolate Songs. And it was a Christmas album because she loves Christmas music. So I was like, I don't have anything. I have a total of 10 mic breeze, 8 of which suck, and a good tape machine. I did have that from that other gig. So I went, okay, when did they make records and not have a lot of gear? So I started looking at how they made records in the 30s and how they made records in the 40s when you had one mic. And if you needed the singer to be louder, the singer stepped closer to the mic. I think it was really good to have those constraints early in my career because it made me strive to be more creative with the gear that I have. I think, to be honest with you, we've gained a tremendous amount because of digital technology. I mean, literally power is in the hands of people. My facility would be multiple millions of dollars 30 years ago, and there would have been no way that I could do what I do. So I think there's a great benefit that we've got, but we have also lost a lot because people aren't as creative. Now, there are people that are pushing that barrier, don't get me wrong. I mean, with any technological shift, there are obviously people on the vanguard that create something new out of that. But I think it's very easy for us to just go, oh, that's good enough, I've got a preset, I'll just use that. Everybody talks about the Lubbock sound, and there truly is one, and I think it's brilliant. And those sounds have been crafted over years by Don Caldwell, by Alan Crosland, who's just a phenomenal engineer out at Route 1 ACUF. He's one of my favorite engineers, and so to step into that you know, I kind of viewed it as a moment where hopefully I can expand on that and help that grow into new markets and into new genres and into new, you know, approaches to recording. Lubbock has such an amazing musical history, so just to be a part of it is an honor. It's not lost on me that you know, when I started this, I was a little bit of a renegade, and to bring some new flavor to a region that it has such a great history and to be embraced. Man, I feel really blessed for that.
In the sun or in the rain, in the night or in the day, like a summer afternoon, like the silver winter moon, my light will shine. My light will shine. As the sun sets in the west, my light will shine on me. 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 As the sun sets in the west. Like the stars up in the sky, like the sparkle in your eye, like a candle in the dark, or burning in your heart, my light will shine. My light will shine like a candle in the night. My light will shine on me. My light will shine. Stars up in the sky, like the sparkle in your eye, like a candle in the dark, burning in your heart, my light will shine. My light will shine like the Holy Ghost fire. My light will shine on me. My light will shine. My light will shine on me. My light will shine on me. As the sun sets in the west, my light will shine on me. Like a candle in the night, my light will shine on me. Like a Holy Ghost fire.
As a teenager, 13, 14 years old, me and my cousins, cover band, just playing music, and then we started really liking what we're doing. We kind of dove more into the live sound side of things first, learned a lot of audio techniques and things there, and then when it got to the point where we started playing original music, of course we were looking for places to record, and everywhere here, or at least locally, was really expensive for a 15-year-old. And at that point, computers were really starting to come up in age, and a lot easier to record your own stuff. So for about $100, you can just go buy a little interface with local music store and start recording yourself.
I started playing music when I was young. I have a brother and sister that are quite a bit older than me, and they had a band when I was a little kid. The thing is, I guess when I started playing, or when I started trying to play, maybe I should say that, I couldn't really find anybody to play with, so I was like, so recording just became the natural option. I can play to myself.
At some point, as we're recording our own stuff and wanting to get our own stuff out there, we actually, myself, started noticing, hey, I actually kind of really like doing this. It's really fun. Went to school for it, learned all that.
I heard about the program at South Plains College, the sound technology program there, probably when I was in middle school, and it just made sense. I feel kind of lucky that, talking to friends, like, I don't know what I want to do after high school, but it was just like, I've been doing that just by myself for a while. I'd like to know more about it.
I actually do feel like the bigger studios are kind of disappearing from the picture, and everyone's kind of going to a new home studio. It's so much more accessible to get a really good quality recording nowadays for a lot less money than what it was back then.
As far as what we were doing in our studio that we had in my living room, it was limited. We had 16 channels and whatever mics we had, which you can do a lot with, but it's still limited. So you have to be very purposeful and very specific about what you want to use, because you only have so much.
I feel like it's more accessible for musicians nowadays to actually get a decent recording because of how many more home studios there are nowadays, or just really out there compared to the big studios.
As far as my music goes, I would rather not record myself most of the time if I had the option, but I'm the cheapest guy to do it most of the time. You probably do have a pretty good idea of what you want to sound like, but all of your insecurities kind of get meshed in with your perception. I think it's always good to have someone there who maybe be just a little familiar, somebody with experience to do it, and sometimes it's honestly difficult to wear all of the hats, the producer hat and the recording engineer and the artist. I feel like your attention gets divided at some point, so I like to just wear one at a time so I can focus on it, but not to say that I don't still do it.